Hi, I'm Lori Anthony from ABC 7 News. Welcome to a forum of candidates running for 3 seats as Discovery Bay Community Services District Director. Today's forum is sponsored by the Contra Costa Elections Division, Contra Costa Television, the League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley, and the League of Women Voters of West Contra Costa. We're recording these roundtables here in the studio of Contra Costa Television. The candidates are Kevin Graves, Brian D. Gouteau, Robert Leet, and Brian Roger Lax Jr. were unable to attend. We drew lots before the show to determine the speaking order, so we will begin with Kevin Graves. Thanks so much for joining us today. If elected, what would be your top priority?
Well, I've been on the board now for 11 years, and we've been working very diligently with the State Board of Water Board to make sure that the quality of water that we're providing for our constituents is the best it can be. We have limited latent powers, but our primary purpose there is to provide water and to process the wastewater that comes and goes, as it does in a house in the town of Discovery Bay. So one of the places I focus most of my attention is to making sure that we're using good contractors, that we're meeting the numbers that we need to meet, and that the water that we're putting back into the Delta is cleaner than the water that comes out.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. Same question for you, Brian. What would be your top priority if elected?
Well, you know, Discovery Bay is a very unique community, and there's a lot of different facets to it. As the newcomer, you know, a lot of the specific problems with the community, I'm not necessarily privy to at this point, but I do have a very strong passion for the community center. That is the one focal point that our community has that could bring everybody together and utilize it. So if I had you know, one kind of edict, it would be to help grow the community center, bring more facilities, and expand and open that up to more individuals.
All right, next question. We'll start with you, Brian. What would you do about the algae, the invasive species that threatens Discovery Bay and other areas here in the Bay Area?
Well, I'm certainly not a scientist, so I can't talk to the technical problems with the algae. But my understanding is this is not just isolated Discovery Bay. This is across the board throughout the United States. And you know, as I watch various news shows, it's taking place in Florida. It's taking place at other lakes and whatnot. I don't know if this is something that Discovery Bay can cure on its own, if this is actually a change in our climate and our environment. So it's something to be looked at, but I don't know if it's something that actually can be dealt with.
All right, Kevin, same question. What would you do about the algae and Discovery Bay? Well,
and Brian brings up really good points. It's not something that we as a community service district have any control, or excuse me, any ability. Our responsibility stops at the water, but what we can do is work with public agencies. We can work with Sacramento, we can work with the county, which we do, in making sure that our voice is heard, that our constituents are heard, that we maintain the value of our homes within our community, that our boaters can go out. People move to Discovery Bay because it is a boating community. A lot of people do. So I think what the key thing that we can do is make sure that we're being well represented as a small community within those larger entities, so that we have a voice and that we can encourage those that do have the ability, the Department of Boating and Waterways and the others that control those waterways, can do what they can do to make it a better place, not only just in Discovery Bay, but throughout the whole Delta.
And I'll start the next question with you, Kevin. Do you have a stance? What is your stance on the twin tunnels?
Well, I do have a stance on the twin tunnels. For the town of Discovery Bay, it would be devastating for that to go through, because it would virtually stop all fresh water from coming through the Delta. As it is, water within Discovery Bay is what's considered brackish, but our ecosystem survives on fresh water. We're on a tidal system. Therefore, we have to have the fresh water coming in, so when it flushes in and out with the tides and goes out through the bay, that it takes all the natural algae, all the natural processes, that it feeds the freshwater fish that we have. We're the largest bass fishing area in the country. And so by starving the Delta, which inevitably is our backyard, from fresh water, would be devastating to our community, and it would be devastating to the environment.
All right, Kevin, thank you. Same question, Brian, do you have a stance? What is your stance on the twin tunnels?
Well, again, I think it kind of also falls along the line of the algae issue. There's a lot of unknowns, and there's a lot of, we don't understand what the implications really might be. I don't know if there's been any official studies. I know that 50% of the state is against it and 50% of the state is for it, so that tells me that obviously there's a lot of trepidation as far as moving forward. Kevin brings up some great points that if it does affect our local waterways, it is going to have a major effect on Discovery Bay. So at this point, I don't have a definitive stance except that if it's going to affect our community negatively, then I'm against it.
All right, Brian, thanks. Next question. Discovery Bay's webpage talks about commercial opportunities and community entrance signs. Do you feel that this is outside the scope of what a community services district board should handle?
Good question. Again, coming in as the new guy, I don't know all of the specific levels of authority that the CSD has, and I'm looking forward to understanding those. But conceptually, as a resident of Discovery Bay, that seems to be the logical group for controlling any progress, especially in the commercial arena. So I believe that is the right place for it.
All right, same question, Kevin. What do you think about these, signs at the entrances and the webpage talking about commercial opportunities?
I am not familiar with any commercial opportunities within the town of Discovery Bay. We do not have land use authority, so that would not really have anything. We could give advice to the county if they decided to have some commercial properties opened up in Discovery Bay, other than the restaurants and stores that are there. We don't have land use authority. So, but with regards to the sign, I do have an opinion on that. It's all about information. It's about getting information out to the public. Currently, we do it with construction signs or maintenance signs, and so we want to put something up there that's permanent, that will enhance the look of the town and get the information to the public. If there's a meeting at the school that has to do with the fire district, we want people to know about it. We put it up on the sign so they can be there. If it happens to be a situation where we're not getting, where we have some problems with the water and the county is advising us that we have a problem with the water, we want to let the public know that. So I think it's just a matter of disseminating the information.
All right, Kevin, did you get this one first? Should Discovery Bay incorporate, and what role would the CSD have in that process?
Wow, that's been the talk of the town ever since it became a CSD. And I've lived in Discovery Bay for 24 years. There's been a lot of chatter about that. At this point in time, I don't personally feel that there's any need to incorporate for a lot of reasons. One is we don't have much of a tax base because we don't have any commercial, we don't have any sales tax coming to us except for a couple of small shopping centers. It would be very difficult for us to find a budget to work with. It's difficult enough to work within the budget that the county gives us for our parks and rec, for our maintenance of our lighting districts and that type of thing. I don't believe that we have a tax base that would support incorporation. That's not an official stand, it's just the way I feel about it.
Do you think the CSD should have a role in the issue one way or the other?
Well, if it were to come about, we would definitely have to take a role with regards to looking at the pros and cons and informing the public about it, yes.
All right. Brian, same question. Should Discovery Bay incorporate?
I'll echo a lot of what Kevin said. I think ultimately we'd love to see the town grow and become more of a larger presence in Contra Costa County, but I think given our current situation, and especially as Kevin mentioned, we really don't have a commercial base and we don't have the tax base. I don't think that we're in a position to move forward at this point. But if we were to, then yes, obviously the CSD board will probably play a role in facilitating that until some other type of governmental, whether it be a mayor or, gets put in place.
Do you think that, next question, that public safety is an issue in your community?
I think public safety is an issue in any community. Certainly, given the fact that we don't have a police force and we rely on Martinez's support for the sheriff department, while there's a good presence, I think there's always room for more presence. And as our town grows, as more people come in, and certainly I'm not familiar with any violent crime in Discovery Bay, but we certainly have a fair amount of misdemeanor type stuff, minor vandalism. So yeah, I mean, more presence is not a bad thing.
All right. Same question for you, Kevin. Do you see I know as a reporter, I am based in Contra Costa County. I can't honestly say that I've been to Discovery Bay for anything terribly serious, fortunately.
Yes.
But still, do you see public safety as an issue in your community?
I do. We do have 2 dedicated community service deputies that are assigned to our district, to Discovery Bay solely. Now, obviously, shifts and all that kind of thing makes a difference. From a public safety standpoint, the biggest challenge that I see is infrastructure, getting in and out of Discovery Bay. The fact that you got a 2-lane road coming in from one side, it's the only thoroughfare for trucks. Also, the other side of the road hasn't been developed, and so you have a bottleneck. I see more, I think what would stymie any more growth for Discovery Bay, which kind of dovetails with your previous question, is the fact that we don't have an improvement, that the county and the state have not dedicated anything to infrastructure support, to widening the roads, to making them safer, to putting in dividers. Even if it's Vasco Road, we have accidents on Vasco all the time. It's just the fact that we're so far out in East Contra Costa County, no infrastructure has been brought in to support the 13,000 or so residents that we have out there.
The next question is for you. If you could change one thing in the zoning code, what would it be?
Wow. One thing in the zoning code, what would it be? That's a pretty broad question. I guess I would like to I would like to give the town more influence with regards to infrastructure, to development within the town of Discovery Bay. We don't have any. We're asked, and they politely ask us how we feel about a new development that's going in. We politely say we don't want it, or we do want it, or whatever the response is. And we're not. I personally am not anti-growth, but again, we have this infrastructure problem. And so, if there was one thing that I would like to see changed, it would give us more authority with regards to new development, so we could make sure it was done in the proper way.
All right, Brian, same question. And if you could pick one zoning area, one thing you could change in the zoning code, what would it be?
Well, I mean, that's a real hard question, given the fact that I'm not currently on the board and I don't have the background that Kevin does with dealing with the counties and everything else as far as zoning. I don't know if this is a current problem, but again, we talked about this earlier. We don't have a good commercial base in Discovery Bay. So if there's some zoning restrictions that's preventing that, then I guess that would be where I'd see some change. I'd like to see some change.
How does this is for you, Brian, how does the CSD know if its goals are being accomplished and its policies carried out?
Well, I assume through a lot of public feedback. Certainly the town of Discovery Bay is not shy or bashful to come in and present at the opening comments for the CSD meetings. So that's one indication. Again, I'm not on the board, so I don't know what feedback they typically get. I imagine that your website gets inundated with emails and questions. So.
And same question for you, Kevin. How do you know if your goals are being accomplished, your policies are being implemented, all of that?
Well, we rely heavily on our staff. As elected officials on a volunteer part-time basis, more or less, right? The biggest decisions we can make is hiring a very effective general manager who then is responsible for hiring a very effective staff. And working with the staff to make sure that whatever resolutions the board comes up with or guidance that the board has given to staff, that those things get implemented. And then we need to personally check on these things and make sure that things are happening the way they are. Also, Brian and I are both extremely involved in the community from a volunteer standpoint. We put on events there. Brian's putting one on this Saturday. We get a lot of people talking to us about what their desires are, what their wishes are, what they think needs to be done. And so I think a lot of the checks and balances, personally for me, come from the feedback I get from my constituents.
I was say you probably hear more about it when things aren't going well as when they are going well.
Isn't that funny how that works?
Yeah. I know about that. So let me ask you, start with you, Kevin. How do you think you could contribute to a successful CSD meeting? I guess, are there improvements that you could make?
It's been a long process. You come on, if Brian is elected onto this current board in one of the seats, he'll find out that it takes a long time to feel comfortable in that seat. I am currently the seated president. So I run the CSD meetings. I've done that 4 different times now. And I'm pretty comfortable in that seat, but you have to learn the Brown Act. You have to learn how to run a meeting. You have to learn how to control a meeting. You have to know when a meeting's starting to go out of control. There are those meetings where we have an unpopular decision to make that may cost people a little bit of money. You have to, and they'll pack the house. You have to know how to do that and be comfortable with that without being rude. But there's a very strict, the state provides us with a very strict way to run our meetings, and we try to control that, and we always have counsel with us there to guide us if we're going in the wrong direction.
All right, Brian, same question. You have ideas about, I guess you've probably attended some of these meetings. And
I do.
you sit there and think, well, I would do this differently, or how could I make this a better, more productive meeting?
Well, certainly, I think the current board is a fantastic board, and they do a wonderful job running. But there are some opportunities for personnel changes, and that's one of the reasons I threw my hat in the ring. My personal approach is I like to look at everything with just a very logical and methodical approach. And I think sometimes as you look at things on more of a micro level, you can kind of disseminate a little bit more. Where I'm going with this is that, I just would like to bring a different kind of thought process to the board, and hopefully it resonates, and the town could take advantage of what I think I could bring.
Let me ask you this. When I hear about people running for community service districts, water districts and things like that, I think, how does somebody think to want to run for that? Or, that's not necessarily a board that is, the city council or something. I guess it's the equivalent of your city council out there. But what made you want to run for this position to the point? I mean, it's obviously a big commitment, and it would take some time out of, I'm sure, the rest of your life, your career. What prompted you? What particular issue or reason did you decide made you want to run?
Well, Kevin kind of led up to a little bit. Both of us are very involved in our community. We do a lot of volunteer work. I personally, as a realtor, make my living off the community as well, facilitating buying, selling homes. So I kind of approach it from 2 different ways. If I can make Discovery Bay just a little bit better of a place, and more people want to come, well, then obviously it's going to have a net positive effect on my business and be able to sell and buy and sell more homes for people. But ultimately, as I look at, since we are governed by a CSD board, the people up there have to have a clear understanding of what's going on and understand that their decisions are going to have an effect on the community. And so I'd just like to bring my perspective as a person that not only lives in the community, but works in the community. I think that will have an advantage to the group.
Kevin, same question. I know you've been on the board for some time. Some people throw their hat in the ring, they try it, they put their toe in the water, and then they're like, yeah, I'm done, I've done my part. Why did you get involved to begin with, and why do you want to stay involved?
I'm insane. No, just kidding aside, what had happened was about 11 years ago, there was a board opening. Somebody had quit the board, and there were some things going on within the town with people that I knew. I've been very active in the community in other aspects, and I didn't like the direction they were going. I didn't like what I was seeing, so I thought, well, the only way I'm going to change it is to literally throw my hat in the ring, and I was appointed then by the existing board to take that vacant seat. And then as I ran for election, I really enjoy being of service. My whole life is all about being of service. I serve veterans with my daytime job. I serve in the military. I serve my town. I just find that I get a tremendous sense of value from being of service. And there's no better place than in a small community where I raised my son as a single parent, making sure that it remains that same town that it was 25 years ago when I moved out there.
As you're looking forward, this is a new question, I guess. You've talked about things in the past that influenced you to take the step. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing Discovery Bay and that part of Contra Costa County, the East Bay, the Bay Area, looking forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that we touched on a lot of that. A lot of it is the infrastructure support. I really feel that we lack in having proper and safe roads getting to and through Discovery Bay. I don't see that changing anytime soon, but I'm in contact with our congressmen to see it from a federal level for funding, and also at the state level to our assembly members. And I also would be concerned then about how to keep Discovery Bay safe from the challenges of the water. I can see that if something happens within the Delta, it'll be a ghost town. We have to maintain the proper freshwater balance within our ecosystem to be able to have it be what it was going to be, so it doesn't become a cesspool.
All right, Brian, same question. I mean, what do you see as the biggest challenge for not just for Discovery Bay, but for the region, perhaps the Bay Area, in the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, and Kevin really touched on most of them. I'll stick with just Discovery Bay because that's what my heart is closest to. Certainly, roads are a problem. Between Discovery Bay and Stockton, Highway 4 there is terrible. It's a very dangerous road. So that's a major concern. Hopefully, at some point, the county will come in and fix that to the best of their ability. We need to grow. We need to get a high school in Discovery Bay. We're lacking that. The commercial opportunities that are not there now. So long term, I just see that the biggest challenge Discovery Bay has is going from where we're currently at to the next step. And I know Kevin wants to keep the town, very small, but eventually that's not going to happen, and we're going to grow because more people are going to come in here. So we have to kind of look to the future and have things in place for that.
All right, I think my last question for each of you, we've seen these disasters all over the country. North Carolina, I've been to some of these places, the fires. Do you feel like your community is adequately prepared should something like that, say the big earthquake, happens? Do you feel like Discovery Bay is adequately prepared and ready to handle something like that?
Yes and no. And I'll let Kevin when he has his opportunity because he has a lot more background, but our fire district has a problem right now, and there's not enough coverage for the area that we're in. So that is a major problem, and I don't know how that gets fixed or alleviated, and hopefully you have some great ideas, but that's the number one problem I see happening moving forward.
That's East Contra Costa?
East Contra Costa, yeah.
Which I think I almost did the story the other day. They're about to start charging for services. I know they've had problems over the past few years. Same question for you, Kevin, is, we've seen all these disasters. It seems one after another, not only in California. We're not going to have a hurricane here, but we could have a big earthquake.
Sure.
Do you feel like your community is adequately prepared?
As you can I need to clarify one thing first before I want to make sure I make a correction to what Brian said earlier. I am not anti-growth. I think that the development of Discovery Bay is probably going to proceed. We don't have that area of influence right now, but I've made my living for 30 years working for developers, so I just want to clarify that. I'm not anti-growth. I just want to do it.
I was not sure to
but to get back to our, we have diligently been putting together emergency plans that involve bringing in boats to get people off of certain areas of Discovery Bay if there's a levee break and there's a flood. Now, we have primary levees and secondary levees, so it shouldn't really be a problem, but a catastrophic earthquake that might break down Las Vaqueras Dam could put us in a floodplain. So we have been making plans over the last 5 or 6 years now to work with the state and with the county to make sure that we have in place a plan, how we're going to get the National Guard, and if we have to get the National, literally, these kind of questions are being asked and answered. So are we prepared? We're working towards that. Not knowing what the disaster is going to be, we're doing the best we can.
And I guess, Brian brought up the East Contra Costa Fire District. Is there anything Discovery Bay can do as a community to help supplement? I know they're getting kind of desperate there at the fire district, and I believe the contract with the Contra Costa County Fire District to supplement is about to end. So any ideas about how the Community Services District could help with the fire district?
By remaining active and supporting what the right way to approach this is. We don't have a spending problem in East Contra Costa County with our fire district. We have a revenue problem. We don't bring in enough money because of Prop 13 to pay for our fire district. So how do we get back to 8 stations? We're at 3 now. We have 1 closed down in the middle of our town. We need to be actively involved with our fire district and support what that board is doing to move forward and try to do the best we can to get the coverage we can.
And Brian, I'm going to let you address that. That'll be the final question, at least. You brought up the fire district. I know it's a real problem. We're going into the worst part of the fire season.
Right.
We had our worst disasters this time last year. So any thoughts about how the Community Services District, and we have about 30 seconds, I think, to say, how you might help?
At this point, I don't know. I really don't have a good answer. As I sit back and I watch the various fire chiefs come in and present, and I think everyone's kind of looking at each other going, please, someone raise their hand and come up with a great idea, because no one seems to have the thought process at this point how to fix it.
We all know we need fire service.
We need fire services. We need more money.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you to our candidates for answering some of these important questions. Each candidate will now have 1 minute, give or take, to make a closing statement. We will start with Brian Gouteau, D. Gouteau. Go ahead, you have 1 minute, you can go ahead and look at the camera.
Well, my closing statement would just be that I'm looking forward. Let me back up a little bit. I've been working and living in Discovery Bay for over 10 years now. As I mentioned earlier, I am a real estate agent, and I make my living facilitating buying and selling homes within the community. So ultimately, my goals and objectives are to improve Discovery Bay as much as possible from my vantage point, which is one of the reasons why I'm running for the CC board. I think that I could bring, based on my background and my experience, in addition to being a real estate agent, prior to that, I have over 15 years in the high-tech arena. So between my business acumen and my current life experiences, I think I'd be a good addition, and I really want to throw my hat in the ring and help Discovery Bay become a better and more prosperous community to be in.
All right,
Thank you.
Brian. Thank you. Kevin, 1 minute.
Sure. I just would say that it's been it truly been a pleasure to serve the people of Discovery Bay. It's been a great learning experience for me. I've always kind of had leadership roles, and to be able to make a difference in the quality of life that we have in Discovery Bay by providing the things, the recreation, the water, and the things that make a town tick has been something that I've really enjoyed doing, and I want to continue to do that. I've been on that board through several different board changes now, and I think that I can continue to contribute. I think the longevity of my experience every year of learning more and more about what we need to do is beneficial, and 98% of the time the board agrees with each other, and we all tend to want to do the right thing for Discovery Bay. So I would just ask you to give me an opportunity to continue to do that, and I ask you for my vote.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. And that concludes our forum of candidates running for the Discovery Bay Community Services District Director in the November 6th general election. Once again, the candidates are Kevin Graves, Brian D. Gouteau, and Robert Leet and Brian Roger Lax Jr. were unable to attend. For more information on the candidates, visit the website votersedge.org. To view this broadcast online, go to www.cocovote.us. I'm Laura Anthony from ABC 7 News. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to vote on November 6th.